Hello and welcome back to the Elite Formula Physio and Training podcast. And I got that right this time, but this is a little bit embarrassing. We're actually recording this for the second time, aren't we, Matt?
We are indeed, yeah. Our first technical mishap in the last 2 years.
To be fair, it is, which is good. But we had a Bahrain review, Bahrain review, Saudi preview, and some Padel injuries that have been and gone and weren't recorded, and now we're here about to do a Saudi review about the preview. So we're going to squeeze it all in and just go for it. But first thing, where are you, Matt? Where you're away at the moment? I've seen on your Instagram you're at track. What are you up to at the minute?
Yep, so we are currently on a back-to-back test for the GT4 Europe Championship. So with McLaren, so we've just been at Paul Ricard doing a few days of testing there. It was a very, very wet couple of days of testing, which made it quite tricky. And then we've driven down to Misano in the south of Italy, where we're doing another 2 days of testing. So again, just refreshing ourselves. This is a new track for the guys that are racing here. So familiarising themselves with the circuit, testing some car setups, and also a chance for us to play around with some new products and things like that we might be using in the season in terms of nutrition and support bits. So yeah, good opportunity for us to meet. The team has grown, so we've got some new drivers on board as well. So again, it's a nice opportunity for us as performance coaches to kind of meet the guys, see how they'd like to function at the track, find out a few of their intricacies and go from there. So yeah, so we're here for one more day tomorrow and then back to the UK.
Yeah, and I think you got a couple of drivers that have been driving for a little while, haven't you? How do you sort of approach that in terms of, you have a way of working, you've worked with the drivers for a while, new drivers coming in, and they might have their own, ways of doing things. How do you sort of approach that, mate?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is a conversation early doors. As you said, we've got in our team, we have 3 pro drivers, one AM driver, of which, a lot of the guys have been in the game a long time. So often just sitting down, finding out what their routines are, what they like. Actually, we've got a great group of guys and girls in the sense of actually they're very open. They kind of, some of them have worked performance coaches in the past. Some of them don't have much support on that front. So they're really kind of keen to go, well, what do you think? Get that. So the biggest thing for us is to have a conversation. There's a bit of logistics involved. So at the moment, at the testing, there's only me here, but there will be another performance coach supporting me for the rest of the season. So there'll be 2 performance coaches on each car, so covering 2 drivers, which makes it a little bit easier. But the big thing is finding out what the routine works, how they think they could get the most from me, so we can kind of find out where we can best support them. And then also perhaps offering some advice on their front. So testing here this weekend, we've picked up a few things, or looking at where the drivers have performed really well, or where they may have struggled, and perhaps then raise some suggestions where we might go, what do you think about trying this? Or, perhaps trying a few nutritional strategies to see whether we can, increase their longevity in the day and things like that. So I think openness, communicating early, I think having a bit of fun with it. I think just being relaxed and finding out where you think you can add value is really important, because the guys are pretty well rehearsed. It's just trying to see where we can 5-10% that might give them a little bit of an edge.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's right, isn't it? It's taking the approach of, I'm here to help. You might have your way there, but use me as much as you like. And we might be able to get a little bit more out of you and stuff there. And asking how do you like to do things, and okay, let's do that, and maybe try this, and going from there. So yeah, I like coming into situations like that, and just observing, and then letting the questions come, and just adding little bits here and there. So it's it's a nice situation to be in, and I'm sure you're helping those guys out there. So sounds great, mate. Sounds great. Cool. So in the last pod I didn't record, we did a bit of a Bahrain review. Can you remember Bahrain now? I don't think I can. Yeah. It was a nice easy win, right?
It was. I mean, Max listed through to the end, which he did very well. But I think, it was a fairly straightforward race. It was kind of as we predicted, a nice kind of intro for the drivers, a good opportunity to dust down the cars and kind of for everyone to see the real race pace of each other's cars. So that was a good opportunity to see that. A few technical issues across the board, but actually, as a whole, the drivers all coped pretty well. No huge mishaps, nothing too dramatic to report. So it was, kind of as predicted. I daren't say that it was straightforward, but it was a nice intro for the guys to the season.
Yeah, and a nice intro for drivers as well, isn't it? It's like we said at testing, relatively easy in comparison track to break themselves in from a physicality point of view, neck point of view. So I'm sure they all were fine with that, and prepared themselves for what's to come next, because Saudi is a physically and mentally demanding track. You heard Charles afterwards, he's feeling his neck. Max was saying, this is a tough track, particularly this early on in the season, to get up to speed in terms of your fitness there. So, first of all, this, the race as a whole, again, another Red Bull 1-2. How did it look from your side?
Yeah, as you say, another Red Bull 1-2. Super interesting race. Obviously a lot of the talk was around. Obviously, the weekend was around Ollie coming in for Sainz. A great instance here. Absolutely, a local one for us. For anyone who doesn't know, me and Brad are both from Essex, so seeing another Essex boy on the grid was always nice to see.
Love that. Yeah, no, all good. I'm in Chelmsford right now, so right in the middle of Chelmsford.
Absolutely. So yeah, it was good to see. I think that was definitely the biggest stir. A great example of a problem that teams often have is, you get a driver. It sounds like Sainz has made a really speedy recovery, which is brilliant. But your driver falls all over the course of your weekend. It's every team and performance coach's worst nightmare. You've then got potentially a young driver, reserve driver coming into the team who, it's always a bit of a shock, particularly that late notice. So no, he did an amazing job. It was, I think, everyone can sympathise with the challenges that Saudi faces in terms of the bust of drivers. We spoke a little bit. Actually, we didn't speak about this pod because this is the pod. But Max, a few years back, we talk about the quali session. We see some of the best, most experienced drivers make mistakes at this track. It is a really, really tough, physical, technical track. So for someone on their first drive to get in,
on the limit physically and mentally the entire time, it's tough. I did see him leaning his head into the pads a little bit there as both through quali and the race, actually.
There was a few mentions. There were some interesting pads that Ferrari had obviously put in just to space out the cockpit a little bit, just to give him a little bit of helping hand. But yeah, a few people had clocked that and had mentioned, what are the pads for?
Oh, mate, like with the experienced F1 guys feeling it, second race into the season for a lad like that to step up and not only complete a race, but hold his own in a race, get points in a race, at a track which is probably maybe one of the toughest, maybe the toughest track on the F1 circuit. It's a long track. There's 27 corners. Your G-force is up to high 4s, 5s for a few of those corners. You've got a bank section as well. Top speeds over 300 kbh. That's some serious physicality that they're going through. I didn't actually see what the temperature was like. I don't know whether it was as humid
I think
as
it was high
years
20s.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you've got all that physicality, and then add in the fact that it's a night race. You got the visual stimuluses there as well. You got the wind coming off the beach. F2 don't really. That's probably the only night race they do, isn't it, in Saudi? So they won't have had a lot of experience from that as well. So I think a phenomenal job overall. Even if he had to lean his head into the pads a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess on top, yeah. And on top of that physical kind of aspect, I guess the biggest thing for us with someone like Ollie, is this psychological element as well here, in terms of, sitting down as a team and deciding what you want from him in terms of setting expectations. I don't know what that conversation was, but I can imagine that, there's very much a debate here of, getting around in one piece and going, look, enjoy the experience versus actually trying to deliver some points back to the team. And obviously, quali was quite an interesting one. We could see he was pushing hard. He missed out so narrowly on Q3. Perhaps just a few small mistakes there, but actually, what he did in the race was phenomenal. He dealt with all of that pressure and excelled, I thought, where he would have placed, and still everyone taken hats off to him for what an outstanding performance it was.
Yeah. Maybe Ferrari expects him to win the race, but I think he did a good job. You never know with him. At least they didn't mess up for him. That was a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, it was brilliant. But no, sterling effort from him. But no, all round, it was a good race. It was, it's a tough circuit. It's a busy circuit, and it's relatively clean. So it was a great race.
Yeah, no, that was decent. No, very good. And we won't preview it today because we've got a weekend off from F1, but we have the Australian Grand Prix next. So, there'll be a lot of chat about, best ways to prepare for that in terms of jet lag and arriving on the other side of the world, feeling fresh, ready to go. And we'll dive all into that next week as Formula One shimmies itself around the world. So we talked about our third Padel injury in
Yep.
our last pod that wasn't a pod, that we tried to make a pod, but we lost it. So the third most common injury in Padel was lower back pain. Very common in all racket sports, just because of the nature of how you strike the ball. You create extension, rotation, and side flexion in the spine, which closes down particularly the facet joints. Interestingly, lower back pain is higher in padel than in tennis, and I believe that'll be because there's more smashes and fast movements. Padel players are up above the head a little bit more, whereas tennis players tend to volley more to around kind of waist height. But Matt, what would we normally see from an injury perspective in racket sports or padel in particular from
Yeah.
lower
So
back pain? Actually.
Yeah, so the two, I sort of break them into two categories really. So the two main ones that we predominantly see, the first one, the most common, probably most likely to be the kind of more mechanical back pain, as we would call it. So your more muscular back pain. And this is typically, for those of you that listen to our last series, is more along the kind of muscle or tendon route of being an overload or a load related issue, whereby we'll often get a reaction from that muscle or tendon as a result of the kind of forces that have been placed upon those muscle tissues. The other type of back pain that we'll see is this more facet joint injury, so more of a joint-based pathology. And again, we're again seeing a kind of irritation around the joint. And again, that's generally due to that kind of extension, rotation, then forward flexion movement, generating a bit of force around there. So the kind of injury that we see a lot in gymnastics, cricket, with these kind of lots of extension and rotation-based movements. The treatment for them varies, but the main thing for us is that important initial clinical assessment in terms of deciphering the difference between the two, because that's really going to outline how we approach your treatment, and potentially also setting expectations of your recovery as well, because your more mechanical back pain, we might expect, a more minor bout to take perhaps 2 weeks to get better, perhaps the more severe bout maybe anywhere up to kind of 8 weeks. Whereas with the more facet joint problem, we may expect even in the more mild cases, actually a time period of a modified load over a 4 to 6 week period at a bare minimum, but potentially up to 3 to 6 months if we've developed a stress fracture there. So again, really good early clinical assessment is going to be key in making sure we categorize you well in one of those two areas.
Yeah, I think the facet joint ones can be tough, can't they? Because you just have to offload a little bit longer in something like a racket sports. Facet joints. If you've just irritated a facet joint, you've just got a kind of local inflammatory sort of response. Sometimes they can settle down super quick in kind of you or me or people going about their normal everyday life. But when you're playing a racket sports like padel and you want to get back to playing that, you're constantly going into the movement that's going to irritate it. It's impossible not to. When you go to hit a serve, you're going straight into that movement. When you're going to return a ball, you're going straight into that movement. And it's quick as well. It's explosive. You're closing it down very quickly, accelerating and decelerating very quickly. So you're constantly going to be irritating it, which is why it can sometimes be a tricky one to recover from. Whereas the strain through the force of hitting the muscle can settle quite quickly. So that does make treatment a little bit more tricky. So we really have to focus first on obviously settling the pain, then regaining good movement, pain-free movement before we then add the force to it. You also want to get strong. So whilst you're trying to regain the movement, get strong in all the other positions. So you don't have to force yourself into that movement, but you can still squat, you can still lift more than likely, because you're not then whacking into that kind of extension, flexion, side flexion and rotation position. And then you can start to add those quick, explosive, dynamic movements through that range, avoiding end range to start with, but then eventually building into it. So you can see how the kind of process is quite a lengthy process, rather than, settle it down and then build back up, relatively quickly, like you might do for a muscular myogenic type condition there. So yeah, it's weighing up how much you need to come away from the sport and how much you can back off, versus, irritability of what is actually happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always think as well, just to add on to that, is for me, education is a really big part of that, of our patients, in terms of getting them to understand a bit about the physiology of what's happened, in terms of understanding what a facet joint irritation is and might look like. I often find imaging is a really nice way of sharing this sometimes with patients, and showing the journey that the brain goes through, particularly with any kind of stress response, but also getting them to understand why we're structuring the rehab as we are, whether that's your offload phase or whether that's a progressive reload. And I guess it's picking your clients and understanding that individual, whether there's someone who perhaps needs a lot of confidence, because we get some clients who come in that this is really debilitating and could be quite worrying, versus those clients who perhaps are not worried at all, and they keep overloading it. And actually, they need to have that education to understand the importance of why that offload is important, and the stress reaction, particularly a facet joint problem, isn't something you just push through, and actually it can often lead to much more severe consequences if we do that.
Yeah, it can propagate into something quite serious. And we've I guess we come from a viewpoint where we've seen that happen quite a lot in gymnasts, haven't we? And a sport where they're constantly pushing into a flexion motion, or into that flexor pattern, which can really close down the facet joints there. So definitely something that we've seen in the past, and definitely something you don't want to happen. So for sure, that's all good advice. Cool. So how much longer are you in Misano for?
Yeah, so we're here till tomorrow. So we've got one more day of testing. So big long day tomorrow. It's comprised of 2 long sessions. So we'll be in 9 till 1, and then we'll have from 2 till 6 to keep on track. Okay. So we have unlimited tires. So it'll be a case of the guys will be constantly running the car pretty much all day.
Yeah, busy days then. But testing, like I say, it's good to get a handle of the car, handle the track, especially for drivers that haven't done these tracks before, and just start to also get into routine again, isn't it? In terms of building up for the season, how do you prepare in the week leading up to the race? How do you prepare during a race weekend? Super important. I had a chat with a junior driver today out in the States, and he's going to sign up to the app, work with us going forwards over the year. But it was so interesting to hear. He just, young lad, but just didn't know how to build into a race weekend. He was actually really smashing his training, doing really well, probably overdoing it if anything, but like overdoing it in a race week leading up to a race. Coming into a race feeling tired, feeling the neck's a little bit sore, and just not knowing how to build up to a race weekend, and then didn't have a clue what to do for a warm-up or work his way through a race weekend. So it's nice to be able to come in and impact also on that as well. And I found that when I went out to do the Porsche GT Cup stuff in the States, actually, it was really nice to kind of take a viewpoint of, I'm not just here to focus on your physical readiness and physical development and preparation to the race. Actually, I can help you work through for a race weekend now, and I guess that's the sort of point and influence that we can now have, which is super nice.
Yeah, absolutely, and particularly in this environment, as you know, in particularly the one where the team's undergone a lot of investment, and there's a whole new team around us, from engineers to crew and whatnot. So actually, the testing for us has been invaluable this week in understanding how each other works, and team dynamics is going to look on a race weekend, and try a few bits of setup and build that trust and relationship as a team. but also to have a bit of fun. We had a couple of down days, an opportunity to get a few dinners in, to train, to do some recovery sessions. So for us, it's about keeping it light-hearted. The end goal is very much in sight. The fact we have a race weekend in 4 weeks' time is very much the forefront. But actually making these camps an opportunity to mix together and have a bit of fun as well is also important.
It's probably the most important thing. You build the good relationships, and with good relationships comes good foundation for success and optimal performance, and all of that. It's all built from there. If you've got a good team, all getting on, enjoying themselves, then everything's gonna flow a lot better. So that sounds great, mate. So enjoy your last day in Misano, and we'll see you back in Chelmsford, taking over the motorsport world. Chelmsford is now. We're all over the place, but I don't know what's happened here. The podcast that didn't record was 30 minutes long, and this is only touching 21 minutes. But I feel like we've talked about a lot more. So I think we've done all right, and we'll see everyone on the next episode. So thank you very much for listening. As always, like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, or if you didn't, please do it anyway. And we'll see you next week for some Australia chat, some jet lag planning, and whatever else is going on in the world of performance and physio.
Thanks for listening.
See you later, Matt.
Lovely.